Now I'm going to get one thing straight. I think the combat in Blade Sorcery is freaking awesome, and when it works, it absolutely works. But when it doesn't work, it really doesn't work. That's the reason why it's not combat I would call perfect. What I mean when I say perfect is that it's simple to grasp and has minimal or non-existent jank. The jank in Blade Sorcery is pretty much baked into the game due to how its combat system was made. Now on a quick note, I'm not saying all the jank in Blade Sorcery is undesirable. It's on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes that little bit of unpredictability can do wonders in keeping the game experience from being stale, but more often than not this works against you and what you're trying to do to look cool while you fight. Back on track, said combat works through what I call a baked animation system, which is what I feel to be the thing that holds back the combat from being perfect. Now what exactly do I mean by baked in animation? I mean the way your enemy's attack is completely predetermined and undynamic. They have a certain list of attacks to choose from, and once they choose it they are locked into a rigid animation until it either ends or is interrupted. Now this way of doing combat works, but I don't think it's the ideal way to handle VR melee encounters, at least not in a physics-based game. Combat that works like this leads to the enemies feeling very stiff and rigid, and sometimes the animation's timings don't seem to flow into each other the best. It can be a frustrating system to work with, since moves that feel like they should have a certain outcome have completely unexpected and oftentimes undesirable results. A big reason I usually encounter this is because of the way enemies react to damage. When they get hit, usually they'll do a basic stagger to the side. If it's a hit with a lot of force behind it, they will enter a ragdoll state. When they go ragdoll, I think this works perfectly. The way they fall typically makes sense in relation to how they were hit. The same cannot be said for the stagger. The stagger is almost completely based on animations. It depends on where they get hit and what direction they get hit. But the amount of distance they cover when they stagger is where problems start to arise, because that distance, unless interrupted by the environment's geometry, is always the same. This problem is admittedly a small one, almost nitpick levels, but this is what kind of leads to the combat feeling relatively stiff. Sometimes when you hit an enemy, their stagger distance doesn't always seem to fit the ferocity or the tameness of an attack. This can cause you to awkwardly misjudge or whiff a follow-up attack because the distance they moved isn't what you'd naturally expect. This problem is not present in the next few games I'll talk about.